a pair of shorts and a pair of sandals. But I mean, I'm not talking about like short shorts. I mean, shorts. I mean, so I looked pretty good. So I went into the church, and the church had about 40 people in it. When I got in there, I knew, okay, this is going to be a little different experience because they were like dressed, man. I looked down, saw my sandals and my legs, and the bottoms of my legs, and I said, they'll accept me. So I just, I'd have too big a attention deficit to sit along the third row. I can never sit in the back where some of you are sitting because every bit of movement, I'm like, I can't do that. I have to sit up front. So I went to that church. I marched straight up front, sat right in the front row. And then as the church service started, I looked back, and there was me and then nobody else for 5 rows. So we started to sing. I was worshiping. I thought, I know that. I remember that hymn, and we sang it. And then they came to a friendly time where, the meet and greet. And I stood up, and I looked around. The only thing I got was a scowl. I had 2 or 3 people almost walk towards me, and then, it sort of out around me. And again, I looked down, and my shorts came down to my knees. So it wasn't really offensive, and I had deodorant on. Very, very strikingly unfriendly. And I thought, wow. But I listened to the word. It was a good word, and, sort of left. Now, my question, at that time, I couldn't have been an offense just being there. I mean, at that time, I was like 140 pounds of twisted steel. I mean, I looked good. Well, that's the second lie I've told in the pulpit today. Because I told the same thing in the first service. No, and I knew it wasn't. There was just I didn't fit. So I know that church. I know that church's history. I know their theological creeds. I know what their founders believed, and it's no different than what I believe theologically. But when it came to the practice and what was valued, their value was you have to look like us, dress like us, smell like us, and sit where we sit. And it was like I broke all those rules. But there was only 35 or 40 of them. It wasn't like I was in a mall and nobody could get to me. So I disagree with the idea that the quantity of people is going to determine the ethos and the friendliness. I'll tell you what it is. It's values. Values drive almost everything. There's a commonality to this. We in the Vineyard as a community of churches, no, listen, a denomination is going to have values. A movement of churches has values. People, there's nobody, none of you in this room are not governing your life by what you value. You may not articulate it, but you're living that way. Families, there's family systems, the way your family runs. Even in the dysfunctional planet we live on, every family, believe it or not, operates on values. Schools operate on values. Businesses operate on values. Go to some of the hospitals around, and you will see now on a lot of the elevators, it's here's our mission, here's our vision, here's what we value. And they've done it long enough. If good companies are going to let the public know this is what we value, and a good leader is going to every once in a while take inventory and say, are we really doing what we say we value? Or is there a disconnect? Are the customers first, or is the bottom line first? What's really real here? That's the way that goes on. So saying all of that, we this morning are going to take a time to introduce our core values that we operate from and in and for the future. Of course, it's not new. They're not new values. We've put some reverbiage on them, and we've worked very hard in collective, not just this church. We're one of several hundred churches in the U.S. and several thousand churches around the world, part of the Vineyard family. We got together a couple of years ago, and our national director asked us, he gave us a little bit of an assignment. There's a board. The Vineyard nationally is overseen by a board of directors, board of elders, of which I am one of eight leaders. And we got together, and our national director gave us an assignment, and he said, you guys, he says, we really need to bring this into clarity, pristine clarity of what is it that really drives us. What are the things that are non-negotiable as a movement? And he said, we need to sit, and he said, I want to have a 2-year conversation on this. This wasn't like, let's figure this out in the next couple of hours. He said, I want to have a 2-year conversation. So we started going through it, emails, hundreds of emails back and forth. Men, here in Maine, Seattle, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Houston, Grand Rapids, Champaign, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, Miami, Florida. We're just zigzagging all of our information, debating, discussing, and these guys and gals and brought in some task force leaders. These, you're talking guys, PhDs, Masters of Divinity, etc. There's some high horsepower intellectual and long-time believers. So this wasn't just a casual conversation. And everybody in that level of leadership's got an opinion. So, it was quite a debate. It's been quite a ride. We spent a couple of years sort of throwing out all the groundwork and where we all were, what we all believed. And then we got together a year ago, and our national director basically broke us into groups, and he said, I want you to go out. He said, I want you to take 2 hours, come back, and write out the 16 things that you will never want to renegotiate, things that are the pillars of the values that you hold as a believer and what you think the Vineyard movement and the Vineyard churches are all about. So we broke into groups, did our homework, came back, and it was amazing. Across the board, we're all in agreement. He says, excellent, excellent. Now I want you to go, and he said, I want you to break up into different groups. I want you to spend the next couple hours, and he says, I want you to come down to 8 things that are non-negotiable, the 8 things you will never renegotiate that are the very core values of who we are as a people. Ooh, that means some things have to go as far as the real core. So we went, and then that's when all the tension ratcheted up. You got some serious opinions, well-founded, theological, historical, contextual thoughts. So we came back a couple hours later, and there had been some elbowing, and, everyone's trying to play their trump card. It was crunch time. It was down to serious business. We came back. That whole entire group came back with the same 8 values. These are 4 or 5 different groups. Okay, good. He says, we're almost home. We're getting there. And I'm thinking, no, man, this is getting tense. He goes, okay, he says, guys, here's the future of the Vineyard. He says, what are the 4 things that you'll never take off the negotiating table? What are the 4 values that will absolutely take us into the 21st century? He says, you guys go away, break into different groups now, but come back when you've come to the 4 things, the 4 core values that you will never, ever doubt, and you will never take your hand off. Wow. Break up into our groups, and now it's tense. Because, everyone's playing a trump card. Hey, I have a PhD. Well, I have a Master's in Divinity. I knew John Wimber. Big deal. I had lunch with John Wimber once. All the trump cards were coming out. Just sort of push the thing along like, I've prophesied 9 times. Well, I've written 2 books. I've written half a book. All the junk was coming out. Well, I will not give up. So it was just, elbows, and I got another phrase, but I can't say it. But it was fun. We came back, folks, and all of those group, all those men and women, we came back with the exact same values. So we're talking about a 2-year process. And there was nothing new. When we wrote these out, there was nothing new. There were things that we had always believed and things we always valued. But what happened was a good leader had made us come into laser focus. Because I stand for these 97 things. Well, there's such an ambiguity in that. But what will you not renegotiate? And I'm going to introduce them, but I am going to really unpackage this in the weeks to come. But I wanted you to understand.